One of my favorite things that happens from time to time is I'll get an email from a listener or a viewer who wants me to tackle a certain topic. So today's episode is an answer to one of those emails. So the topic that this person requested that I speak to is definitely in the communication realm, but not necessarily in the one I usually play in. But one of the great joys of being in this business for a while is that I've developed a pretty awesome network of experts. One of those experts is Amy McCready, who is a friend of mine and also is a nationally recognized parenting expert. She is the founder of Positive Parenting Solutions. And if the name Amy McCready sounds familiar to you, it could be because you've seen her on her many, many appearances on the Today Show and CNN and Fox and Friends. So she is definitely a recognized thought leader in the parenting space. And today she's on my show and we're going to be talking about something that has relevance both in the parenting world as well as the professional world. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Karin Reed. I'm a 4-time author, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, and communication expert on helping people to own the room, whether it be a physical one or a virtual one. Welcome to Speaker Dynamics. Amy McCready, it is a delight to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Karin, thank you for having me. I feel like we have been talking about this for years, and it's such a privilege to finally be on with you.
Well, and let's tell our listeners why this is happening, because you are a nationally recognized parenting expert, and you're like, okay, this is a show about leadership communication, executive presence. How does parenting fit into this? Well, here's what I realized. I had one of our listeners or viewers, I'm not sure how that person consumes the show, but he said, how do you give a pep talk to kids under the age of 10? And I thought, oh, that's kind of an interesting communication conundrum, and certainly something that is not in my wheelhouse. But I know the person who is, an expert in this area, and also how it perhaps can be applied to those who listen more regularly, which would be those who are in leadership positions and trying to inspire their team, inspiring their board, whoever it is. So with that in mind, this kind of question kind of centers on pep talks and what I would call like the perils of praise. Do you hear this often? Is this something that is new to your ears where parents are concerned about this?
They are, because every parent wants to learn like how to motivate their children. And sometimes It's how do I motivate my kids to do their chores, and how do I motivate my kids to do well in school, whatever it happens to be. We're all interested in that. And I think the beautiful thing about this topic for your audience is the principles that we talk about in giving our kids a pep talk are exactly the same as working with, coworkers, employees, whatever it happens to be. So whether a listener's child is 4 years old or 18 years old, or it's someone in your office, the principles we talk about today will be universal.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk about what not to do. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see parents make when it comes to giving a pep talk, praising your children?
Yeah. And we do this with the absolute best of intentions. But what happens is the words that we use sometimes add more pressure to our kids rather than alleviating it. So when we say, oh, you're so awesome and you're the best and you're so smart and all of those things, it puts pressure on kids because they think, oh, wow, like this is something that I have to live up to.
Yeah.
And now it's not making me feel better. It's actually putting more pressure on me. Yeah. The other thing that happens with praise is over time, if we're not doing praise effectively, kids get dependent on it. They need it. They need that next sort of hit of, am I doing okay, mommy? Just to know that they're doing okay. And what we'll see is that those kids grow up to be more motivated by external factors. So whether it's by praise or recognition or money, they tend to be motivated by external factors rather than their internal compass. So it's important from the standpoint of motivating our kids to do their best, but we also want our kids to develop that internal compass that guides their decision-making down the road.
How can you tell if your child is somebody who is motivated by external factors more than internal? What are some of the signs?
So for little kids, it'll be like, oh, mommy, do you like my painting? Was that a good cartwheel? Because kids want to please us. And in some respects, parents like that. Like they kind of think that's a great thing. And some parents will even use it as a way to manipulate behavior, right? Like make mommy happy and do X. So you'll see it in younger kids in that way. But what's interesting and scary is that, as kids get older, they're not that interested in our approval anymore, right? It's the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the peer group, and that's who they're looking for approval from. That's who they're looking to please. And so again, long term, kids who are dependent on that external validation end up often being people pleasers. They have a hard time setting boundaries. They can be high maintenance spouses and they can be high maintenance employees. So again, that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So that we make our, every boss's job a little bit easier so that they don't feel like they have to constantly be giving that external validation. Wow, that was an amazing PowerPoint you just put together. Yeah, aren't you? I'm so proud of you for that PowerPoint or whatever it is. But is this a relatively new phenomenon with parenting? Or is this something that's been around for time infinitum?
It's so funny you asked that question because this whole concept of rearing kids on praise actually goes back to like 1969. It was a book that came out called, what is it called? Of course, I'm not going to remember the name of it.
That's okay. No worries.
Brandon, I think, is the author. I'll let you know what the title is. But anyway, the premise of the book is that the most important thing about child rearing is their sense of confidence. And so praise kind of became the buzzword in parenting. And so during the last couple of decades, it has been all about praise. And again, it's always with the best of intentions, but it can often backfire. And some of the ways that it backfires is when parents will say something like, oh, you're so smart, right? So think about back to the pep talk, the child has a big test coming up and the parent says, you're going to do great. You're so smart. Well, that leaves the child, again, feeling more anxious because in their minds and heart, they're not feeling especially smart at that moment. But if we can shift that to something like, you know what, you put a ton of preparation into studying for that test. You did all those practice tests online. That preparation is going to pay off for you on this test. That way, we're linking the specific actions, the study time, the preparation, the taking the tests online, like all of those things that the kid did to prepare, we're linking that to a successful outcome rather than their God-given smartness or not. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, and it makes me realize all the mistakes that I made in my parenting along the way. But to that point, let's help people out. How can they get their children to be more internally motivated? And I'd love for you to just speak to it from a broad sense, but also give some specific examples, which I know you're great at doing.
Yeah. So externally motivating. First, let's just talk about rewards for a minute, right? A lot of parents use rewards to motivate behavior. That is an external motivator. So I always recommend that parents back off on the rewards because there are much more effective tools to use to get kids to do what they're supposed to do and do their best. So we don't need the rewards. We can remove that from the equation.
So take the sticker chart off your wall.
Yes. Again, the research shows this, that kids will do the behavior to get the reward, to get the gimme, right? So we're fostering that, what we call that external locus of control. Who or what is motivating the behavior? It's external. So we want to foster, if it's for reading, we want to foster the love of reading. We don't need a sticker chart for that. So that's one way to sort of remove those external motivators. The other, kind of back to our praise discussion, is when we are giving our kids feedback, let's shift the focus inward. So instead of saying, oh, I'm so proud of you, which that's fine, but your kids know that you're proud of them. It's so much more effective if you say, wow, you must be so proud of yourself. And just stop for a minute and let that sink in. And you'll just see them beam. And that's a huge shift for parents, but that tiny little phrase makes all the difference. Wow, you must be so proud of yourself, because it puts the focus on the child. It's what they did that created that outcome. So that is one thing that we can do. The other thing that is just so important is that our feedback be specific and repeatable. So again, we use the I'm so smart example. Instead of those sort of labels, smart, amazing, good boy, bad, like whatever those things are, think about what are the behaviors or attitudes that contribute to that outcome. So again, back to the smart example, instead of you're so smart, you're like, wow, that study time really paid off, that perseverance, that reaching out for help, that organizing a study group. What are the specific behaviors that contribute to that outcome? Instead of like, wow, like you're the best player on the team, you're the best athlete. That doesn't help the child do anything differently in the future. So what are the specific behaviors that contribute to a successful outcome on the field? Wow, all that time in the backyard practicing your left kick, that really made a difference in the game. So something very specific, so I know what I can repeat in the future to have a successful outcome.
So let's drill down on what happens in the workplace for those children who are raised with the sticker charts and the "you're so smart" and here's your participation trophy because you deserve it, whatever it is. Like, how does that translate? And what is do you think it's worse now, because you were talking about how this really came into vogue in the late 60s, early 70s? I imagine that there's a lot of folks who are raised in this way who are populating workplaces. Do you feel like it is truly a big issue and is getting to be a bigger issue at this point? And it's I'm going to stop there with my questions, and then we'll keep moving on. So
it is a big issue.
Today.
And you see it, like employers are jumping through hoops to motivate employees, keep them happy. And a lot of that is great. And we have made tremendous strides in terms of worker engagement and commitment and all of those types of things. But at the same time, what we don't want is a high maintenance employee who needs just constant validation to know that they're doing okay. And this generation of praise junkies, if you will, you're right, they're now in the workplace. And so it becomes an additional challenge for employers to, obviously they want to create a productive and enjoyable work environment, but just to know how to keep these folks motivated.
Yeah. How do you break the cycle though? Because we're talking about positive parenting, but like, is there positive leadership that would relate to dealing with the overly, praise motivated employee?
Yeah. So again, the principles are very similar. It's that specific and repeatable feedback. So instead of me saying, Karin, you are a rock star in that meeting today, I would want to shift it to why were you the rock star, right? Things like, wow, your questioning skills really made our client feel seen and heard today. Or your preparation really made the meeting go so much more smoothly. Karin, your attention to detail caught that problem early, and that really saved us a lot of money. That does a number of things. It tells us what skills are valued, right, in this organization. And you can bet that I'm going to be really conscious of my attention to detail or my questioning techniques or whatever it is in the future. So think about the specific behaviors that we want to see more of in the future. And those are the things that we really focus on rather than just the blanket, good job, you were a rock star in the meeting today.
Yeah, it makes me think about how I counsel spectators whenever I'm doing like a presentation training, and I tell them, don't give the, wow, that was really good. Yeah, it sounded great. Like, that's not helping them. You need to give your peers specific feedback. What made it great. And that way they know what behaviors to continue to do. And also, probably more importantly, the behaviors not to display. So it can go both ways, but that specificity really seems to be the special sauce for sure. So yeah. You can choose to answer this, Amy, or not, but did you find that you had to shift from the overly praising aspect of parenting to the version that you're talking about? Do you see it in your own behaviors in the past? I know both of us, our kids are pretty much grown.
Yes. And because I was raised on praise. And I was a praising parent. But thankfully, I learned this when my kids were on the younger side. And so I did make that shift. And I would say things like, you must feel proud of yourself. Or instead of, oh, that's the most beautiful painting. Like, what do you think about it? Really shifting that focus inward, like we talked about. And I remember my youngest was probably in first or second grade. And he said, oh, Mom, I am so proud of myself. And then he told me what he was so proud of himself for. And I was like, oh, hallelujah. Like, it's paying off. Like, he had internalized that I am so proud of myself. And again, our kids know that we're proud of them. That's fine. And a few I'm so proud of yous is not going to hurt anything, but we want the balance of our communication with them to be focused on them so they can learn to self-assess and self-evaluate rather than depending on us for that feedback. One other thought I had that I wrote down when we were talking about giving feedback, I always talk about the difference between a thanks and an encouragement. So like, thanks for doing that. That's fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when we're showing gratitude, we go so much farther when we can actually tie that to the difference that it makes for us. So thank you so much for putting your backpack on the hook. That was a job that I didn't have to do, right? You always tie it to a difference that it makes for you. And for parents, I always remind them that the difference between a chore and a contribution is the difference that it makes to someone else. So when you're thanking your kids, when you're thanking a coworker or an employee, thank them, but always add on the difference that it made to you or to the organization or to the family or whatever it happens to be.
Amy, I love that. And I'm going to hopefully be able to apply that in my own life as well. One of the things I was thinking about is there ever a time when it is appropriate to layer on the praise more? Like in a certain circumstance, say that a child is really struggling, and even though you can say, aren't you so proud of yourself? And they're like, I'm really not. Like maybe they're in just kind of a low place. Is there a time when praise is appropriate?
Well, first off, I think you can always show your unconditional love and support, and that's a huge piece of this. Our kids need to know that they are that our love and our affection is not based on what they do or how they perform. It is based on who they are. So we always start from that standpoint. But even when the child is so down, we can always point to something that they did or some little area of improvement that they make. And so when I think about encouragement versus praise, I always think about encouragement like a big red arrow, right? We're always encouraging any movement in the right direction. It can be so tiny, but if it's any movement in the right direction, that is to be encouraged. And whether you use the terms praise or encourage or like whatever it is, just so we have that mindset of we're not focusing on the final outcome, the A that they got, the goal they scored, or having things turn out just the way they wanted to in the class play or, in the work environment. That may not happen. But if we can point to their hard work, any improvement or progress that was made, that's always going to be encouraging.
Yeah, I love that so much. There's been so many nuggets of wisdom that you have dropped during, a very short period of time that I feel like I should have been taking notes as I went along. And I'm sure those who are listening and watching are doing the same and feeling the same way. But I always ask the same question at the end of every episode of my guests. What is your one big takeaway that you'd want our followers to kind of chew on until the next episode?
Yeah, I think the one big takeaway is that our kids don't need a pep talk that hypes them up, right? What they need is adults in their lives who recognize their effort, recognize that progress, however little it may be, because those are the things that they can actually control. If we focus on those areas, that will keep our kids motivated. It will lead to more positive outcomes, and it's going to lead to a stronger relationship between the parent and the child. or the employer and the employee, whatever it happens to be, in whatever setting you're in.
I was just going to say that, Amy. I'm like, you are a nationally recognized parenting expert, but I think you're also going to be a manager whisperer because you had great advice for those who are struggling with their employees who may have been raised in a certain way that is now being translated into how they operate in the workforce. So, Amy, thank you so much. This has been super fun. And I look forward to having more conversations with you if they fall into your purview. And always love to call upon my network that is full of amazing people like you. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, Karin.
What an amazing conversation. I think Amy is fabulous. I'm sure that you feel the same way. And if you would like to learn more from her, she has a lot of different ways that she puts her information and advice out there. So if you go to Positive Parenting Solutions, you can check out all of the many ways that you can become a better parent. It's going to be in the show notes, so you can check it out. The other thing I wanted to share with you is our bonus content for this week. So Amy has offered up a free download of 27 ways to encourage your child. She said it's one of the most popular downloads, but I also would say that you could swap out the word child for your employee. So it'd be 27 ways to encourage your employee. So it definitely can play both ways. So if you want to check it out, go to speakerdynamics.com/bonus content. Once again, it's speakerdynamics.com/bonus content. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode and for allowing me to delve into the parenting realm with a good friend of mine. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please do share it with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues, and let's continue to build this community. Until next time, everybody.